So I would also like to start with a land acknowledgement really fast because we are on the University of Moscow campus. That's where I'm at right now. U of I Moscow campus is located on the homelands of the Namipu Nez Perce tribe. We extend gratitude to the indigenous people that call this place home since time immemorial. U of I recognizes that it is our academic responsibility to build relationships with the indigenous people to ensure integrity of tribal voices. So again, a little bit more about our presentation setup. I'll be presenting first and then I'll pass it on to Kathy. And then also at the end, we'll have a question answer session to talk a little bit more about any specific concerns you have as students and any follow-up questions about what's happening in the legislature and how this might change student life moving forward. So first off, what is a bill? A bill is essentially a proposal for a change in state law. This can take a few different forms. So first off, an enactment is just adding new rules to current Idaho code, acts, or anything else that the form of law takes place in. An amendment is just changing those current rules that are already set in law, and then a repealment is getting rid of old rules that may just not be best practice anymore or that may be irrelevant as we stand right now. Just so far in this session, there have been 576 bills introduced. That does not mean that all of these have passed. In fact, most of these will not become law, but that just kind of gives you a scope of how many different topics are discussed in the legislative session every single year, which is just a crazy amount that we can really look at all the different things that affect all of these different facets of student life. A lot of these bills will go on to affect us, but not necessarily as a student life or in our student experience, or even just where we are in the state. So a bill is first introduced by a legislator, a group of legislators, or a committee. These bills take form of just text documents, whether it's an enactment, a repealment, or an amendment of how they want the law to change. And then also there's a statement of purpose and a fiscal note that is included in the bill as a separate document so that we can see what is the bill trying to accomplish and what impact will it have on state funds. When a bill is first introduced, that legislator, group of legislators, or committee testifies first in front of a committee, which is a just very short hearing before the bill is decided whether or not it will be considered on the floor and moving on to further steps. So after this very first initial hearing, if the committee decides that they're willing to move forward with the bill, it will be assigned a number and it moves on to the Senate floor. Then, depending on whether it's introduced in the House or the Senate, the Speaker of the House or the Leader of the Senate will introduce the bill and then refer it back to a committee, depending on what kind of content area the bill covers and what subject matter it is. There are 25 committees in the Idaho State Legislature. There are 15 committees in the House and 10 in the Senate. These have a very wide range of topics. There's things from agricultural affairs to education to state affairs to judiciary, rules and administration. All of these different committees have different areas of expertise and have different numbers of senators and representatives serving on these committees. Senators and representatives, they can take a chair position, a vice chair position, or just be a regular member on the committee. And most legislators actually serve on several different committees so that they can offer their opinions and their expertise on different content areas as different bills are introduced and go throughout the becoming a law process. In this initial committee deliberation, oh, sorry, Shawnee, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I was just curious, since we just had our census, because those numbers could go up, right? If with the increasing amount of people that have moved to Idaho.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, depending, right now there are 105 legislators in the Idaho legislature. There are 70 representatives and 35 senators. Amber, Kathy, do you actually know if there's potential for those numbers growing depending on the census data?
I do know the answer to that question, and it is no, because in the last election, November, we voted on a constitutional amendment that would make it a law that 35 districts is what Idaho will be divided into, and each one gets one senator and 2 representatives. So that is the current law right now, and it will not change.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. And the way that the districts are set up, it is kind of based on pockets of population area within geographic location. So when you look at the district map, it's kind of wacky because there's some really big districts geographically in northern Idaho. And then in like Ada County, it's divided up into a ton of little districts. But each of those pockets of people has one senator and 2 representatives that are elected to represent them in the state legislature. So when those bills go on to committee deliberation, this is when the committee conducts as much research as they can about the bill before making an informed decision. This can take place in many different areas. There can be actual research done by legislators. There can be experts that give testimonies on bills. There can be public hearings. Like Kathy said, she testified on 10 different bills, which is incredible. Any individual can come forward in a committee and say, this is how this would affect me. I hope that you vote for this bill or against it or change it in some way. And then as soon as the committee has made a decision on whether they're going to move forward in supporting the bill or if they have any changes, they can then report the bill to the House or Senate floor with a recommendation. This recommendation can be a do pass recommendation or a do not pass recommendation. But generally, if the committee does not want the bill to pass, then they will let it die in committee and they will not move the bill forward with a recommendation. There are also some other recommendations that are a little bit more complicated and full of legal jargon, but the most important thing to remember is that committees, if they want the bill to pass, they will move it forward with a do pass recommendation to the floor. A lot of bills do die in committee, where the committee just decides to hold it in their own body and not move it forward in the floor, maybe even not hear any public testimonies or anything like that. So if the committee does release the bill to the floor, then it becomes open for debate and discussion on the House or Senate floor, depending on in which chamber it was introduced in, basically who presented the bill and who's sponsoring it. So after there are questions asked, discussions are had, then there's a vote taken, a voice vote taken, so that each senator and representative's vote is recorded in public record on how they voted on each bill. Most bills will require a majority vote in both the House and the Senate to actually pass and move forward in the process. So if it passes with a majority vote in the House, it moves to the Senate to repeat the process. In the Senate, it will then be introduced again. It will be referred to a committee. The committee will make a recommendation and it will go back to voting, and vice versa if it's introduced in the House and it passes there. When there's a majority vote in both chambers of the legislature, in both the House and the Senate, the bill then moves on to the desk of the governor, and that is the final step in which a bill can finally become law. So the governor has basically 3 basic options that he can make. First off, he can pass the bill by signing it into law within a set time frame, which is about 5 business days generally. He can pass the bill by not signing it into law within those 5 days. If he does not make a decision and he doesn't sign the bill or doesn't reject it, then it will automatically become law. Or he can veto the bill and return it to the legislature within a set time frame. However, if the governor does veto the bill, then a 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate can override that veto and it will go into law. So generally, just to recap, a bill is introduced, it goes to the floor, it goes back to a committee, and then it goes to the floor for debate and final voting. It moves on to repeat the process in the other chamber of the legislature. If it also passes there, then the governor makes a decision on whether or not that will become law. Do we have any questions just about the legislation becoming law process? All right. So I'll now talk about some of the ways that the Idaho legislature can directly impact student life. Like I said, there are almost 600 bills that have been introduced on the floor. Not every single one of those is going to impact a facet of student life. And all of the bills that I'm talking about are kind of just a brief overview of some of the things that are affecting us as students. Kathy is going to talk a little bit more about how to find specific bills and how to find information. Sorry about my cat, by the way. She's going to talk to us about how to find some more information about any other bills as well. But just a brief overview of some of the things that are most important to us as students and as representatives of the university as well. So first off, for higher education funding, we obviously pay for some of our university operations with tuition and fees, but state tax dollars also pay for a portion of university operations. And this is especially apparent because the University of Idaho is the land-grant university of the state of Idaho. So the different ways that the legislature gives funding to different programs throughout the state are through appropriations bills that come out of the Joint Finance Committee. So appropriations bills essentially create budgets for all the different programs in the state. There's not just education, there's also things like agricultural research and public health and a lot of different things that affect the public that need funding. They are funded by state tax dollars and they have to have a budget presented and then passed through both chambers of the legislature and signed by the governor to actually take place and have those tax dollars spent. So here are a few of the funding bills that affect us, especially at the University of Idaho. So Senate Bill 1179, that is just the general funding bill that pays for Boise State University, Idaho State University, Lewis and Clark State College, and the University of Idaho. The four-year institutions in our state are split separately from appropriations for the 4 community colleges in our state. So the current status of that bill is that it passed the Senate and it's now going on to be voted on in the House. Same actually with Senate Bill 1175, which is money specifically for health education programs at 4-year universities. Senate Bill 1187, that is money for special programs, which includes a lot of different things that change every single year. Sometimes it's scholarship funds, other times it's discovery centers, other times it's just research and development at different universities. That bill has not yet been voted on in the Senate, so that it will be happening soon. Hopefully it'll pass there and move forward onto the House. And then Senate Bill 1147 is money specifically for the University of Idaho that goes towards our agricultural research and extension offices, which is a really awesome program because it helps us not just to educate students in the University of Idaho, but also the public on different agricultural things that help the common good. Another way that the legislature can affect higher education is by implementing different requirements and different funding formulas for our universities. So first off, House Bill 153, that was proposed and it would require separate funding bills for each university. So that would allow for legislators to look at each of the different universities, look at what we're offering, and decide which universities they want to offer more money instead of allowing that decision to be made by the State Board of Education. That bill actually died in committee back in February. House Bill 299, that prohibits public school employees, including public university employees, from influencing students' votes or offering extra credit for students to vote. So this is a bit of a controversial bill. I'll admit I was against this bill when I first heard about it, but after I read some more, researched some more, and I actually read the Attorney General's opinion on it. This is something that is already in place in several different states, and it's also a federal law. If there's a federal candidate on the ballot, then it is a misdemeanor to offer extra credit or any other kind of compensation for students to vote. So that bill passed the House. It's being amended in the Senate, and then it will move forward onto Senate consideration. And then finally, House Concurrent Resolution 12. And resolutions are kind of the legislature's way of saying, this is our opinion on some general issue, not necessarily making a change to state code, but just kind of saying, we're encouraging you to do this, or we think this is a good idea or a bad idea. So this resolution actually denounces social justice education. So in this resolution, it recommends that universities stop implementing social justice and also encourages future legislators to punish universities that decide not to eliminate social justice coursework, positions, and departments. So this is a really interesting resolution because it offers an opinion that I'm sure a lot of students would disagree with, but there's also a lot of people that think it's a good thing that tax dollars would not be going towards different social justice education and ideology programs. So right now, the Associated Students of University of Idaho, we're working on a resolution going against this bill and opposing this resolution because we think that social justice should be a part of public education. But that is also something that if you are against it, I would love to hear more opinions because I always think it's a great idea to just have a public forum and allow anybody to share their opinions. And this is also something you can read up more on the Idaho Legislature's website as well. Some other things that affect student life. 60% of University of Idaho students live off campus. And I assume that a lot of those students, like myself, are renting residential properties. So the state law, state code specifically, it sets rules regarding lease terms, security deposits, landlord-tenant relations, and other things as well. So this year I saw 2 bills that were introduced that would actually really improve landlord-tenant relations. First off, House Bill 152. This requires landlords to hold security deposits that are paid in a separate federally insured account. So this is a good thing for students because, and also just anybody renting a residential property, because it just offers that extra security that a security deposit is for. It's already Idaho code that your security deposit has to be given back to you at the end of your lease agreement. This just offers some more protection to make sure that money is still available at the end of a lease agreement. That bill is currently, it passed the House, and the Senate committee that it was referred to sent it out with a do pass recommendation. So hopefully the Senate will pass that bill as well. And then Senate Bill 1088, this adds a little bit more transparency to rental fees in lease agreements and also requires for rental fees to be reasonable amounts that are set in the lease agreements. This bill is kind of in the same place. It passed the Senate and the House committee gave it a do pass recommendation. So those are both things that would greatly improve student life and just students' financial health as well. And both of those bills have resolutions that passed the ASUI Senate in support of these bills the week before spring break. So that was really awesome to see. And finally, just overall civil rights is something that affects not only students in Idaho, but also just every single resident in the state of Idaho. These include things like rights to vote, work, attend school without discrimination. These all affect college students especially. So House Bill 105, this would prohibit absentee or early voting for federal candidates for everybody except those that have a physical inability to vote or those who are serving in the military overseas. This would be a really bad thing for students because that means that any students that are living in Moscow but registered to vote in their hometowns, they would have to drive that 6, 8, 10 hours, however long, to go home on voting day in the middle of the week and cast their vote there instead of just being able to do a mail-in or absentee ballot. This is something that ASUI Senate also passed a resolution in opposition to, and this bill also died in committee last month. So that is a positive thing for students that we're able to keep our voting rights. Next, House Bill 344. This is actually a reintroduced bill that started out as a bill that would not allow for student IDs to be used to identify yourself at the polls and also to register to vote. Luckily for us, this bill has changed so that now there's just a state issued photo ID with your birth date that is required to register to vote and to identify yourself at the polls. As it stands right now, this bill is soon to be introduced in the committee for its first hearing, where it will then go through the entire bill process. And finally, Senate Bill 1030. This is, if you've heard of Add the Words Idaho, this is the bill that they talk about every year. This bill would add sexual orientation and gender identity to civil rights protections for all citizens in the state of Idaho. This bill is actually one that has been introduced into the Idaho legislature every year for the past 15 years. And every year it has died in committee, including this last year, which is a little bit disheartening because I mean, anti-discrimination, I feel like that's not a very controversial thing, but unfortunately, it died again in committee this year, but we do have people that are fighting the fight and advocating for these protections. And the ASUI Senate passed a resolution in support of this bill as well the week before spring break. So
does this go along with the, what is it, the Equality Act right now that they're talking about? Is this kind of along the same lines?
Yeah, so the Equality Act is actually a federal resolution, House Resolution number 5 of the 117th Congress. So that also adds sexual orientation and gender identity to civil rights protections on a federal level. So we would have those federal protections. This would just add it at the state level. As of now, there are about 13 cities, I think, including the city of Moscow, that have protections for sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as one county, I believe. But we don't have any statewide or federal-wide protections. Okay, are there any questions about any of those bills, how they might affect student life or anything like that?
Caitlin, I have a question.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about ASUI's involvement with these different bills and how you've been passing resolutions as an organization. Can you talk to us a little bit about how students who might not currently be in ASUI can get involved in that?
Yeah, for sure. So I know Kathy is going to talk a little bit more about how we can be really good self-advocates and be really good at reaching out directly to the Idaho legislature. But the Associated Students of University of Idaho, that is basically our student government. So there are some elected positions on the Senate. My cabinet position, I was appointed by ASUI President Lauren Carlson. And ASUI, part of our actual job description and our mission statement is to represent the interests of students to the Idaho legislature. So one way that we do that is by holding regular office hours that can be found on the ASUI website, and also just being accessible for students to share your opinion, share your concerns, and also to offer any information that we might have that you may want to know as a student. So if you are wanting to get involved in ASUI, there are actually elections coming up. There are election packets that are available if you want to run for a Senate position or run for ASUI president or vice president. There are election packets that are in the Department of Student Involvement office or on our website as well. And if you just want to have a conversation with your elected representatives, then you'll soon be able to make appointments with us on VandalStar. But right now you can find our emails on the ASUI website and reach out to set up a time to meet so you can share your opinion and make sure your voice is heard by your student government. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, so with that, and also if you have any more questions, we'll have a question and answer portion at the end as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kathy. Kathy, just let me know you want me to change slides.
I think we're ready. And I'll tell you what, that is a hard act to follow. Katie, you're amazing. That was incredible. I hope you will run for office soon. Okay, how to contact your state officials. First of all, you need to go to the website for the Idaho legislature. And so if you just do a search for Idaho legislature website, this is what you will see, which is a very busy website. You'll notice up in the upper right-hand corner, state of Idaho, who's my legislator? That's the first thing you need to click on. You've got the cursor there. Are you controlling that? Is that Katie? Thank you. Yeah, who's my legislator? And then what happens is once you click on that, you will see this. And over on the right-hand side, it says find my legislator. And you enter the street address of where you live or where you are registered to vote. And then it will tell you in the next slide, if you go ahead and click on that, here are my legislators here in District 5. Senator David Nelson and 2 representatives, Brandon Mitchell and Carolyn Nelson-Troy. And then if you click on Senator David Nelson, for instance, if you go to his name and click on that, what will happen is you will see this, and it gives you a lot of information. First of all, there's a paragraph down at the bottom that describes him. So you'll kind of know what his background is and, you know, a little bit about him. On the very first line of what's given to you is his email address. And it's a link so that you can just, don't click on it now, Katie, but if you go to the very top, right next to his picture where it says dnelson@senate.idaho.gov, that is where you would actually write an email to him. It also has his home address if you wanted to send a letter there, but while they're in session, they're going to be down at the State House in Boise. So you wouldn't want to do that. And you wouldn't want to call his home phone number either. But the State House phone number is what you would call during the session. And below that are the committees that he serves on. So Katie told you how many committees there are. There are a lot of them. So each senator and each representative serve on several committees. So those are the committees that he serves on. So then if we go to the next slide, if you want to know how to find a bill in the legislature, I think the easiest thing to do, and maybe Katie, you can use the cursor to go to the box that's kind of shaded right now called legislative sessions. Don't click on it yet, but when you click on it, it will take you to several places you can go. I guess we'll go ahead and click on it right now. And what I like to look at then is the bill center. Basically, this is the place you would find all the bills. And they're listed by bill number, or if you look at the top on those tabs, you can see legislation by number or legislation by subject. If you don't know the number of the bill, but you know it's about education in general, you can, when you click for the subject, you will just do it by alphabetical order. And then the enacted legislation are the bills that have been voted on and becoming law, and any vetoed legislation is listed in those tabs. When you look at the bills, you'll see the kind of purplish House bills and Senate bills labels there. Don't click on those now, but if you click on them, you will go right directly to the House bills, which are all labeled with an H, and the Senate bills that are labeled with an S. And you can see that, for instance, the first bill that's listed 0001 is about disasters and the governor's powers. And it says H State of AF. That means it's in the committee, the House State Affairs Committee is where the bill is sitting right now. So that gives you an idea of what is happening to it. If you click on the actual bill number, it will take you to the bill information itself. And I think that's on my next slide if we want to go there. Yeah, here's a sample bill. Senate Bill 1110. It gives you the full bill information that you can click on, or the bill text itself. It gives you a statement of purpose, which is a short version, just a very summary of what the bill is all about, and a fiscal note. The fiscal note means what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost the state if this becomes law? And then the legislative co-sponsors are there too. Below that, you'll see the bill number and the fact that it was in the state, or is right now. No, it started in the State Affairs Committee. But then, as you can see, the dates go by when it was introduced, when it was reported out of the committee, and then it was read in the House itself, and it passed in the House with a vote of 26-9. And you can see who voted for it, the ayes, and who voted against it, the nays. And they're listed, those are legislators who are listed in alphabetical order by last name. So you can see who voted which way. Then you'll see below that it was received, it was in the Senate State Affairs Committee, I'm sorry, because that is a Senate bill. So then it was received from the Senate to the House State Affairs Committee, reported out of the committee with a due pass, and then it has moved on now to go to the full House for a vote. Now, if we take a look, I think at the next slide, I'll show you what this bill has in it. Yeah. When you click on the actual bill itself, you'll see there are places where there are underlined parts and strikeouts in the code. And the strikeouts mean those words are going to be eliminated and the underlined words are going to be added. And so this bill is a very short one. I'll just tell you the basic idea of this bill. You'll notice on section 2 that what it has done is said that before a petition can be entitled for final filing and consideration by the Secretary of State, there shall be affixed the signatures of legal voters equal in number to not less than 6% of the qualified electors at the time of the last general election in each of, notice they have stricken the words 18 and changed it to 35 legislative districts. And the rest of it is stricken because they don't need to add that part now that they've made this the change. We have in Idaho 35 districts. That's all of them. And what they're saying in this bill is that in order for you to get a petition on a ballot, you have to get 6% or more of the qualified electors to sign a petition in every single one of the 35 districts. That's a change from being only 18 districts, which was the way it has been. And any of you who have ever signed petitions know how hard it is to get signatures on petitions. And the League of Women Voters is very, very opposed to this bill, because what it's doing is basically making it almost impossible for any citizen-led action to get a petition or an initiative or a referendum on the ballot just for people to be able to vote on. It's going to be almost impossible. So right now, this particular bill has been passed in the Senate. It went through the House committee, passed, and is now in the full House. It will be voted on as soon as the legislature comes back in session April 6th, probably very soon after that. And if it passes both houses, it will go to the governor. And for instance, then what do? You know? And so as Katie said, well, it's going to go to the governor's desk. He has a choice. He can veto it, or he can sign it, or he can let it go without signing it, and then it becomes a law. So many of us are recommending writing to the governor right now, just saying, in case it passes, we'd like you to veto it. So that's an example of a bill. I have to tell you this, the remote testimony that was just begun this session had a very few people doing remote testimony over the time that the legislature's been in session. But when this bill came up, it broke the bank. It shut down the system. There were so many people who were testifying against this bill that they had to close down the system. So just to let you know. All right, we can go to the next slide. This is another bill. This is the bill that Katie was talking about, actually. That's 344, House Bill 344, that requires many things to change in order to register to vote and to vote. And I'm just showing you this page because it does say at the top there what you need, what you're requiring to have when you register to vote. Number 5, a current student identification card issued by a post-secondary education institution in the state of Idaho that displays the individual's date of birth. So that's what she was talking about. And then further down below, you can see that they struck the lines that were describing before. What you could use was just simply a student photo ID card. So they've made that extra little step in there for you. I also have to tell you that another reason that this bill is on the League of Women Voters list to oppose is because if you read later on in it, when you register to vote, you have to include your full first name, full middle name, and full last name. Well, right now, I'm not registered with all full names. I would have to go back and re-register. And I predict that most people my age and most people who have already registered would have to go back and re-register because it has to match what's on our driver's license. And right now mine do not. So that's another thing to consider. All right, let's go to the next slide. Writing a letter to an elected official. Once you've found their email address and you want to write to them, here's an example of, well, partially my letter and someone else's. I think I put them together to just give you an example. I wrote to Representative Troy and Representative Mitchell. I also wrote to the governor too. I'm very opposed to these bills because they'll make it nearly impossible for a citizen-led initiative or referendum to reach the ballot in order for all Idahoans to have a chance to vote on them. The requirements are much too restrictive, whether they're rural or urban residents, and are infringement on Idaho citizens' right to participate in our government. By requiring the threshold number of all 35 districts instead of 18, a single district, this is something to remember, a single district could prevent an initiative from getting on the ballot. That kind of veto power by one district is unacceptable. Please support it, Idaho citizens. And then the very last sentence was, you know, these bills will be read on the House floor soon. I ask you to seriously consider voting no on them or for the governor to veto them. Thank you. You would always say thank you and always say sincerely, and then write your name and your address so they know that you are a constituent of theirs. So that's just a sample letter. And let's go to the next one then. Oh, here are ways you can get more involved even. We welcome you at the League of Women Voters. Students are free. Normally it costs, I think, $56 for an individual to join. So take advantage of this. And I've got our website there for you to click on and just say you want to be a member, and as that you're a student and you're in. And we have weekly forums with topics that are range from all kinds of things. Every Wednesday at noon, we meet and we have speakers from all over the state and all over the country actually now, because we're doing it on Zoom. And the next thing is I want to urge you to get involved with redistricting, which is happening this year after the census. Once we get the new census data, there'll be a redrawing of all the legislative district boundaries. And as we said before, there are 35, and according to the law now and our Constitution, it has to be 35. So someone mentioned earlier about how the population has grown in Idaho. Absolutely true. So what's that going to do to the districts? It's going to make them have to be larger to take in more people, about 5,000 more people in each district, probably. So what's going to happen is in rural districts like ours here, we're going to have to enlarge bigger space, but that kind of dilutes our vote. So it's a little disturbing. But what we're doing at the League is we have created a video that shows how you can be involved in redistricting in the process, because there will be a reapportionment committee set up sometime in the fall, probably around September. And they will have to decide by December on all the boundaries for every single district in the state of Idaho. And there's a very cool boundary drawing tool called Dave's Maps. And you can play around with it and check and see what it does to the population in each district, whether you're including people of communities of interest together, because you don't want to separate communities apart from each other. You want to get things balanced in every single district. So, and right now there is a little bit of evidence of gerrymandering in past districts that have been drawn. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen this time around. So that's one thing you can get involved with in the fall. And then also in the fall, voter registration events like National Voter Registration Day, September 28th this year. And I know that some of you were very involved in that. I know Amber was. And also there will be probably a petition drive of some kind, and you can get involved by collecting petition signatures if it's for an issue that you're passionate about. And then this last one is something I just thought of. You could actually run for a position as a precinct committeeman or committeewoman in either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. Both parties are in desperate need of precinct committee people who can kind of rally the troops regarding what issues are important to them. And we're always looking for people who are willing to do that kind of work. So, and then I think I have one more slide. Is that right? Oh, be sure to vote. That's the one thing. And according to this, you as a student have a right to vote no matter where you are. It's basically you can choose. According to the Supreme Court in 1979, students have a right to vote in either your home state or your university state. And that means if you're in your home state, but you live in Coeur d'Alene, whatever, you have a choice to vote in Coeur d'Alene or to vote in Moscow. So it's up to you to make that decision. And just be aware of the fact that if you need an absentee ballot well ahead of the election, make sure you take care of that. So I think that concludes my part of it. Does anybody have any questions? I think that's my last slide, isn't it, Katie? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions about any of the content and all of the huge amounts of information we just covered?
No, I just really appreciate all of it. Thank you.
Okay, well, that is great to hear. Thank you for showing up and asking questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up, Stephanie?
So I just got out of the military and I am attending the university, obviously. And I had to do absentee voting while I was in the military. I'm from Michigan. And so you're telling me that I can do an absentee ballot here in Idaho because I live in Coeur d'Alene now.
Mhm. It just depends on where you're registered. Where are you registered right now?
Tennessee.
In Tennessee. Okay. Are you going to
Yes.
be, okay, so you can vote in Tennessee. You can maintain your voting rights in Tennessee, and you would request an absentee ballot from them for any election that's coming up. And then you would have to make sure you get it in on time for their elections. But while you're here right now, as long as you are a resident for 30 days in Moscow, Idaho, you can register to vote in Latah County. But you would give up your Tennessee registration, obviously.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. And so you can vote in Latah County, but now you said something about Coeur d'Alene too? What's,
I live in Coeur d'Alene.
you live in Coeur d'Alene, so you're gonna have to choose where you want to vote. And just make sure that you register before you vote, or you can register according to Idaho law right now. You can register on the day of the election at any polling place where you
Wow.
want to vote. Now, I have to tell you something. This is a warning, everybody, because there is a bill in the legislature right now that I am working against, and that is S 1166. What it is saying is that county clerks can choose to have as few as one polling place in their county where people can register on the day of the election. Right now, every polling place in Idaho allows you to register on the day of the election, but this bill is saying that a minimum of one, which means that if, for instance, election funding at a county level is low, they don't have enough money to run as many polls as they want, polling stations as they want or could have had in the past, they could cut it down quite a bit. And they could also cut down the number of polling places where people can actually register on the day of the election, which means that, for instance, if they choose that the polling place for Latah County, where you can register on the day of the election, let's say it's here in Moscow, that would mean that somebody in Kendrick would have to come here to register to vote, and then on the same day, go back to Kendrick and vote. Okay?
That
Pretty
seems
crazy.
crazy. Why would they want that?
Because this is the year when Republicans all over the country are putting forth these voting laws that are limiting voters. And it's happening here in Idaho. So that's what's happening. We have a super majority in the legislature right now. And I have to tell you, part of the reason for that is in the last election, you know, you just heard that there are 105 legislators in our legislature, right? When they had an election for this last November, 48 of the 105 positions had no Democrats even running. Okay, so those 48 were a shoo-in for the Republican candidates who were the only ones running. So our legislature is about 80% Republican, 20% Democrat. And they're a super majority. They can, in fact, with the bill 1110, that would make the initiatives harder to get. And if they vote for it and the governor, even if the governor vetoes it, they have a good opportunity to override the veto. So that's where we are in Idaho.
Yeah, and just piggybacking off Amber's comment, I understand because I'll be 29 this year and I registered to vote before the elections, but in the past it was always the day of. So by taking that away, like you guys said, it's really going to eliminate a lot of people's votes.
Right, right. And like I said, too, with the bill that's number 344 that Katie also talked about, with the one that requires you to have your birth date on your ID card, the one where I'm going to have to go and re-register, right? Because I have to get my full first, middle, and last names in there. How many people in the state are going to know that before the next election? And that bill comes with 0 for a fiscal note. That means you're not going to spend any money to get the word out about this for people, because there's no money asked for in the bill for that. So just to let you know, those are the kinds of things that the league is working on right now to make sure that we guarantee the vote for everyone and that it's fair. So.
All right, well, if there aren't any more questions, I'm just going to drop a quick plug for ASUI really fast. Just a couple more opportunities for you to get your voice out there and get involved with student government. My email, I just dropped in the chat. That is my email, so you can contact me with any questions you might have about ASUI, Idaho legislation, or anything else, just how to get involved as a student as well. Amber dropped a link, thank you, Amber, for the packets to run for ASUI positions if you're interested in that. And also I want to say that ASUI agendas for Senate meetings, they are for students to see, and students are more than welcome to come share their opinions, any concerns they have about resolutions or bills that we have on our ASUI Senate floor every single week. We meet at 7 p.m. on the 4th floor of the ISEB and over Zoom. You can do either way to come share your opinion or just listen in on the things that are happening in your student government, and also just how people are voting, what some of the debates are about current issues affecting university. So please let us know if you have any questions. We love to hear the student voice because it is our job to represent you accurately. So we welcome anybody who wants to share concerns or get involved at all. So Amber, Kathy, do you have anything to add?
Well, I'd like to make a plug for the League of
Yeah.
Women Voters too. We really need some younger faces in this group. Most of them are like mine, and I've been around a long time. So we would love to have you join in our meetings. I'm trying to think of the topics that we have. I'll send it to Amber and maybe she can pass it on to people. But you can go to our website. It's the League of Women Voters of Moscow. And I actually, tonight, I'm really representing the League of Women Voters of Idaho, because our group is mainly, the advocacy group is from the entire state. And so, but if you just go on the website and you'll see the speaker series, we call it, I think, every Wednesday, and you can see some of the topics that we have coming up. And then to join, it's free.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, awesome. Thank you again, Kathy, for joining us and presenting. All of that information is incredible information for how to advocate for yourself. And that's definitely something that I'll be using over these next 2 weeks and when the legislature gets back in session as well. That is really great to hear and have these organizations that are supporting student interests as well. That is great to hear.
Mm-hmm. One thing I did want to mention, if anybody is interested at all in giving remote testimony, I can go through that really quickly with anybody who's interested. I don't know. I know you all are so busy with school. I know what it was like when I was in college. And these meetings, these hearings are always during the day, 8 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They're going on. And so I don't know how available you would even be for that. But I think letter writing and email writing is the way for most of you to go with that. But I'm happy to talk to anybody about that if they're in.
And I do have a video that Kathy made about how to give testimonies. So I'm planning to send an email out to all of you after this event with some more information and follow up of what Kathy and both Katie have said tonight. So I'll be sure to include that video in there too, so you can watch that in your free time.
Yeah,
Well,
thank
great.
you everyone again for joining us and all of the great questions and just wanting to get more civically engaged, because we really do need that young voters not only voting but also making that effort to show up and share your voice to our legislators. It's really intimidating, it can be really scary, but it is what needs done so we can actually make progress in our state and also advocate for ourselves and just graduate this university also as well-informed citizens who are engaged in our democracy. That is a super, super important part of the university experience. And I'm really glad that all of you are taking this step forward and getting engaged right now so we can go out into the world and make great things happen when we're outside of Moscow as well. So thank you everybody again.
Thank you so much, Katie and Kathy. Oh, if there's not anything
I
else,
just wanted to say thank you, ladies, so much. I really appreciated this tonight. I'm glad I got to sign up for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
all right.
And
well-
Amber, where will the recording be posted?
Oh yeah, I will post that on our Center for Volunteerism and Social Action page. So I will make sure that is included in the email that I send out to everybody as well. But if you have any questions, definitely, I sent either myself or Abby, who works in the Center for Volunteerism and Social Action, sent out the Zoom link to you. Feel free to follow those emails back and let us know if you have any questions or are looking for any specific information. Great. Thank you so much, everyone.
thank
Have
you
a
again.
great rest of your night.